And now it's so bad that America cannot pay the interest on our debt. To understand that, America is now bankrupt. And the question we're going to answer today is, how did America, at one time, reportedly, the richest country in the world, is now bankrupt? And now it's so bad that America cannot pay the interest on our debt. To understand that, we have to have three old guys today here because we've seen it happen over all these years. We could see it coming. The question is, what does that mean? That'd be like you saying, oh, I took out 10-second mortgages on my house, but now my job at McDonald's doesn't cover the mortgage payments. What does that mean? It means you'd be living out back of McDonald's. That's what it means, if you can understand this whole thing. Very, very important to understand how the richest country in the world went broke, and we're broke today. A lot of people had no idea back then, and unfortunately, to this day, they don't. How do we become bankrupt? How is it that we owe $1 trillion in interest payments and we don't collect that much? On top of that, we owe Social Security, Medicare, and the biggest asset in America today is student loan debt.
All the entitlements that are out there are far more than the national debt that we have.
Correct.
It's even bigger than when we hear the national debt just hit $33 trillion. It's maybe more like $200 trillion is the real number.
I think it's 260.
Yeah.
260 trillion is ungodly. How do we get this far into debt?
Well, I can remember in 1976 when the national debt was approaching $1 trillion and everybody was up in arms saying, well, we can't stand $1 trillion national debt, that the country will go down the drain. And fast forward a few more years and to 33 trillion, and just in 3 months in the Biden administration, they added over 1 trillion to the national debt. So it took us
in 200. A few months.
Yeah, in 3 months. It took us 200 years to get to the first trillion. Biden was able to add another trillion to the 33 that we have now in 3 months.
Well, thank you, Joe, and all you liberal college professors out there.
And I told my kids one day, I said, no matter what else I do in life, the one thing I've been forced to become an expert on is government lying. Because think about how it's corresponded with our whole lives. There was the Kennedy assassination. There was the Gulf of Tonkin incident that didn't really happen. There was the Pentagon Papers.
The problem is a lot of people listening have no idea what you're talking about.
I know, but we're going to get up to things like the missing weapons of mass destruction. Does that sound familiar to younger people? The Nord Stream pipeline blow up. I mean, it just keeps going on and on and on. And I say to young people, if you want to do something in life that is a real growth industry, forget artificial intelligence, forget all that stuff. Get into the business of keeping up with government lying, because it's a growth industry. It's bigger and bigger than one man can handle. The Federal Reserve, that's where it really goes on. And that's why we're in the predicament you were referring to earlier.
Right. Speaking to younger people, how did we get here? We were once the richest country in the world, 1945, yeah. They made the U.S. dollar the reserve currency of the world. And the dollar was backed by gold after World War II because we sent millions of people over to Europe and Pacific, and we came out the richest country in the world, 1944. And now we're bankrupt.
You know, they told the rest of the world at that time, you used to hold gold in your reserves and issue your own currencies against gold. Gold's passé. So from now on, you just hold U.S. dollars. You hold these U.S. dollars, issue your currency against these U.S. dollars. And it didn't take long for people to suddenly start realizing that the United States is printing a lot more dollars than they have gold to back it up with.
So 1944, we were a legitimate country.
Yeah.
Banks all over the world would take the U.S. dollar.
Yeah. Which was redeemable still for foreigners.
People would take the U.S. dollar. I was in Peru. Their central banker showed me all the dollars they had stacked in their safe because it was as good as gold. And then what happened in 1971, Tricky Dick Nixon took us off the gold standard and the dollar became debt.
And that should have been the tipping point for all of us if we didn't already see it in 1933 when Roosevelt confiscated the gold from the American people, but foreigners could own it. We couldn't exchange our paper dollars for gold. In fact, if you had gold, you had to turn it in. And if you didn't, you could have been fined up to $10,000 or imprisoned for 6 months.
That's the 1933 Act. They took our gold. That was a communist FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, who brought us Social Security, which is now bankrupt.
Even worse than just stealing, which I think we agree they did. They stole all the gold, but they called it in at about $20 an ounce. And once they had it all, then they raised the price to $35. So the American people were swindled out of billions of dollars in one swift move.
Once again, all you young people listening, this is what don't teach you in school. Because the schools are Marxist, they're communist. My poor dad had no idea what was going on. I remember in 1964, I'm holding up a U.S. quarter. And I'm looking, this is in Hawaii, I'm going, why is this quarter copper? So I asked my dad, I says, why is this copper? He says, get good grades, you'll be fine. You know what I mean? So I'm looking at this quarter, but little did I know. See what happens when you go to schools who are led by Marxists. They're good people. They're just Marxists. Like some people are Jewish, some people are Christians and all that. Economics is kind of a religion, but they're Marxists. So I'm holding up this quarter and I'm going, what is wrong with it? It's got copper in it. 1964. And that was Gresham's law. And Gresham's law says what?
Bad money will drive good money out of circulation.
Bad money drives out good money. So that was 1964. I asked my dad, I said, what's going on? He goes, just get good grades. That's our problem. And today, Arizona State University, they're just revolting on campus and all this, led by 39 professors who attacked me last year. What is wrong with our school system? Anyway, the reason people could not tell that quarter was fake was because their education system is part of the problem.
They didn't understand money. Yeah, what gives this green piece of paper value? They think, where does milk and eggs come from? Milk and eggs come from Safeway. And they don't understand the farm in the background that makes milk and egg. They don't understand what gives money its value. Right. And so that's how they've been able to bamboozle this nation now for generations with fake money.
The point here is this: in 1913, the Fed was created. First Marxist act in this country. So how can you call the Fed Marxist? Central bank.
Yeah, it's one of the planks of Karl Marx's 10-plank Communist Manifesto. He says, if you will accomplish these 10 steps, you will have a communist state. And chief among them is the creation of a central bank in charge of money and credit.
And who runs the central bank? College professors. Yeah. Who's the Secretary of Treasury? College professor. Yeah. Marxist. Yeah. Communist. Yeah. Don't look at me. Check it out. Janet Yellen is a college professor.
Yeah, and a Marxist too.
That's what I'm saying. And our central bank, the Fed, everybody goes, oh, what's the Fed going to do? What's the Fed doing today? I said, it's not what the Fed's doing, it's what are you doing? What are you doing? Are you still working hard, saving money, investing in the phony stock market right now? I mean, what are you guys doing? Oh, no, I'm going to do what my teacher tells me to do. We're old enough to know the history of how America, the richest country in history, is now technically bankrupt. I was looking at a chart this morning of the national debt. We cannot pay interest on our debt.
It cannot be sustained.
What does that mean?
Well, they can't collect enough taxes for it to happen. They can't print it fast enough. The value of the dollar will just nosedive. It's already going way down. We're at historic inflation numbers right now. How can you sustain that kind of a debt, pay the interest on it without running the country into the ground?
And even some of the establishment guys are starting to scratch their head and look at this. So Moody's downgraded U.S. government debt just last week. Fitch's has downgraded it. It's been downgraded since 2011. But the American people hear that news and they don't know what it means. They don't think there's anything wrong with it.
But I got a college degree. I have a college degree. My kid's in a good school. And they're being brainwashed.
They're being indoctrinated, yeah.
Something is wrong. So I asked my poor dad, PhD, Stanford, Northwestern University of Chicago, what does that mean? Just stay in school and study. Don't question the government. And the more he did that, I started talking to my rich dad. He goes, what do you listen to all the time? How many times the government lies to us per minute? They lie constantly.
Endless.
The old joke about how do you know if a politician is lying? You see their lips move. Well, that's not funny anymore because it's true.
And now we're bankrupt. But my kid's in a good school. I go, oh my God. So that's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, back in 1997 it came out.
Found this video insightful? Hit subscribe, turn the bell on, smash that thumbs up, and dive into the links in the description below. Join our vibrant community to ensure you never miss a video. Your generous support fuels our passion. Thank you for watching. We love you.